Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a Spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
It's been a pretty chaotic 15 years, if you think about it. So spanning from the Great Recession to the longest stretch of prosperity we've seen to a global pandemic. So one thing for sure is that you got to be prudent and protect what you've built and what you've worked so hard for. Here to discuss some best practices and things to really think about as we move forward is the owner of the Great Lakes State Insurance Agency, Pam Lambropoulos.
Hey,
welcome to the show, Pam.
Thank you. Good morning.
I always sometimes stumble over your last name. I never say it in its completion. It's Pam Lamb.
Pam Lamb works, but you said you did perfect. I was impressed, actually. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Well, welcome to the show, and I appreciate you being here. So Great Lakes State Agency is what's called kind of an independent agency as opposed to a captive agency, correct? So
correct.
Tell us a little bit about what that means and what are the differences.
Well, I can tell you firsthand, I know both sides. So
Right.
I was captive for about 30 years, and then I went over, and now I'm on the independent side. And what that means to me, and it may mean different things to everybody, but to me, that means that you buy me as your agent. So if something happens where you want to change companies, whether it be coverages or price or something that I can't give you with the one company, you can keep me as your agent. So
Okay.
you're truly buying me as your agent, or buying my agency, the knowledge I give to my employees. You know, so that's, to me, that's what it means the most. So when I had somebody that I couldn't place with a company, they didn't have me as their agent. So now pretty much, you know, not always, but pretty much I can find coverage for somebody. So I like that, and I like that I can keep people, and you build a relationship with your customers, you build a relationship with your agent, and that's so important when something bad happens. You know, when you need them, you know to reach them, you know who they are, you know how they work, and that's, to me, that's the best part of this,
Right.
the independent side.
So the captive, right? So you're writing insurance basically for one brand, right?
Correct.
One company, and arguably they're very robust in what they do, but occasionally you'll hit a wall
Right.
where it's like, we just can't do that, or we can't find you. You'd have nowhere else to shop.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the insurance world, they call it the appetite. If that's not their appetite or what they're looking for, you know, so now, you know, hopefully I can find a place for you, and you can keep me as your agent, keep my agency as your agency where you're familiar.
Right on. Okay. So, you know, insurance is kind of a big macro term. What types of clients do you tend to have? What types of policies do you tend to write? I mean, most people think of car insurance, and,
Right.
and then that, you know, maybe homeowners insurance, but insurance certainly covers a lot of gambits, right?
It covers a lot of gamuts, and
Yeah.
we definitely do not do them all. You know, I just don't think you can do them all, you know, and to be good at it, you know. So, yes, we do the auto insurance, which is, you know, easy to find. You know, a lot of people sell auto insurance, you
Yep.
know. So, again, you're looking for the agent that's knowledgeable because, you know, quite frankly, you can go online and buy your auto insurance. So why are you buying it through an agent? So you need to spend that time with your agent and get the proper coverages for you. So then we do home, we do commercial, and, you know, and commercial encompasses so many things. And, you know, all of those encompass so many things with the cybersecurity now.
Right.
Buying different type of vehicles that they have out there now. You know, how does my electric car get covered? What's going to happen when I need to replace it? You know, there's just so many things that it covers, and there's so many nuances to every policy that you really need a professional to tell you, like, hey, this company's good for you, or this policy's good for you, and this is what it covers and what it doesn't cover.
Right. And I think about that a lot. When I did consulting, mostly small business consulting, one of the things that I would kind of lead with at the beginning of the relationship was making sure you've got great professional service providers, right? So insurance, financial planning, accountants, lawyers, you know, marketing people, you know, just, I think a lot of times when businesses start up, they use their brother's friend and they use their sister-in-law, Jane, you know, and all that stuff. And then they grow and realize that they're chiseling on stone when they need something that's a little bit more robust. So I really do put insurance in that professional services bucket of just advocacy, and it's a relationship, and you need to really probe. It's not just a matter of finding the best price, signing the policy, paying your bill once a year or every month or however you choose to do it. It's a consultancy.
Exactly.
I mean, is that accurate? I mean, I put that in there, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because the reputation you have is that consultative approach, and like let's look at this from a bunch of different directions, and have you considered this?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do. And again, you know, 35 years of experience, I have a lot of stories. You know, right. we can make this podcast go on for a couple hours just with the
Right.
stories of people who who chose price. And so if you come in and you want the cheapest price, we can give that to you, but I want to tell you the ramifications of that price.
Yep.
This is what's going to happen when you have a claim. And this is how it's going to be dealt with, So it's so important that you have that conversation. And I'm glad that you put us into the whole circle of professionals, because we're protecting your business. We're protecting something that you put your whole heart and soul into.
Right.
And then if you take and minimize that, you could lose everything, So I'm glad that you put that in there, because you do need someone that knows what they're talking about, knows all the ins and outs. And we want a customer that cares about their insurance. That's what we're looking for. So you ask, like, who do we insure? We're really not looking for someone that's just coming in and, just buying the policy, because we don't want something too bad to happen, and them not be covered properly. We want to have someone that is going to have the conversation with us. And anybody who's listened to this podcast, they should do that. If your agent calls you and wants to do a review with you, sit down and do a review with them, because when we write the policy, we can't go over every single coverage in that time. We would sit there for hours, because there's so many bells and whistles you can put on or take off. So, every year, if we contact you or your agent contacts you, do that. Sit down with them and go over your policies, because we're protecting your life, so your family can live on after you pass away. We could be protecting your business, your cars, your auto, all these things, your largest assets. Take it seriously and see what's going to happen.
And as a consumer, I can understand how there's some skepticism. It's like, oh, my agent wants to meet with me so they can sell me more stuff.
Exactly.
But it's really just a relevance check of how have your goals changed and how have your assets changed. And then, I started the show talking about these last 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to hear your spin on that. Going through a recession, having a streak of real unprecedented length of vibrancy to a pandemic, does that change your industry much, or your outlook on the advice you give your people? Or are those just things that happen in the world, but insurance remains pretty steady? And I'm not leading you with that question because I honestly don't know the answer. I mean, it may be still kind of static. You still need to insure certain things and regardless of what's going on in the world around you. But how much? It's
a really good question. I mean, it's a really good question, because we view it differently than a consumer, I think. And you hit it exactly right. When I'm calling you, hey, do you want to do a review on your policy? What is she trying to sell me?
Right.
What is she trying to get me in the door to sell me more? Or sometimes they walk out of review with more coverages. Sometimes they walk out the door saving money because there was a discount that came out new. So it can go both ways. Or they have coverages that they really didn't need anymore. So it can go both ways. But I do feel like I offer a coverage, tell them what it does for them or what it doesn't do for them, and then let them make that decision. Right. So at least at the time of the claim, someone's not coming to me and saying, hey, why didn't you tell me about this? Why didn't you tell me about this discount? Why didn't you tell me about this coverage? I know that they know and they made their own decisions. So that is how I set myself up when I do a review. I say, I'm not here to sell anything more. I'm just here to tell you the coverages, and then you make your own decision based on the price, obviously. You can't afford it all, or you want to get rid of some things. So we'll talk about each one of them. So when we go through everything of what's going on in the world right now, I think the perception of the consumer changes. If we're going to a recession, how can I save money?
Right.
And maybe this isn't the best place to save your money. Maybe it is. Maybe we do look at things, and say, hey, you do have money in the bank now. Let's raise some deductibles. Let's get your premium down moving forward.
Right.
But taking off coverages might not be the best thing, because this is what it looks like to your family after a claim. So, going into the recession, we see that. We also see pricing of cars going up to repair them, to fix them.
Right.
It's very expensive just to fix them. And then housing, how much it costs to rebuild your house. So looking at making sure that all that stays up with inflation costs more. So some people don't want to do that. So we'll sit down and look with them, make sure they have the right coverage, right company to be with, and then see what we can do to save them money and not get rid of the really good coverage, the unknown coverage of how much is this going to cost me. So when the pandemic hit, if people would stay in touch with their agent, you're not driving your car as much. Let them know that. Let them know that you're not driving your car as much. Do you need the kind of coverage you have on there? A lot of people are working from home now. How does that change your policy now? So that could save you some money. Just have that conversation with your agent, and at least once a year, and you don't have to come in the office. We can do it by Teams. We can do it over the phone. You don't have to come in the office to go through and do something really thorough and make sure that they're covered correctly. So for us, we don't change how we do insurance. We really change, I'm coaching the customer and saying, hey, I know this is going on in your life, but is there something that we can do to help?
I know in personal experience, your customers change too, right? So Not only does insurance change and you trying to push information to the customer, but we're now kind of empty nesters or kids in college, right? And cars have aged a little bit. So deductible changing, or maybe I don't want collision on this car that we've paid off anymore because we'd probably just replace it if it got,
Right.
So I think it's good not only to just come in with open ears to receive the information that you have to give, but to share information about priority changes. And, it's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, we bought this thing over here that I guess we probably should have insurance on yeah.
Exactly. And that has changed a lot with the new law. So not only did the pandemic hit in 2020, the law changed in 2022, 2020 also.
Right. So tell us about that.
So now there's a lot of caveats, like who's in your household has to be listed on your policy, or young drivers, even if they're not driving, have to be listed on your policy. Every company's different. So sitting with your agent and saying, okay, this person now is off to college. How are they going to be covered under my policy? Or this person owns their car, but they still live at home. How are they going to be covered? It's so different now with the new law that you really do need a professional to sit with you and say, this is what's going to happen at the time of the claim based on the way you have your insurance policy right now.
Okay.
So, it's very important, because if you have the unlimited personal injury protection on your policy and you're paying for it, you still want to get it. And if you don't have your policy written correctly, that could change things. So, just sitting with your agent and saying, this is what the situation is and how do I insure correctly so that if I have a claim, my family gets the coverage.
So you mentioned earlier electric vehicles,
yes.
Right? And so that's a shift. I mean, I guess maybe standard insurance processes still apply, but does that throw a wrinkle into the way policies are written, or is that harder?
Not the way that they're written as much, but there's certain companies that want to insure them. They're going to get a better rate and have the coverages that you need, like to replace it, to have the gap coverage, because they are expensive.
Yep.
So if you get a loan on it, you make sure you have that gap coverage so that you're not out so much money if you total it, down the road just a month later.
Right.
So making sure that you have the OEM parts, which is the replacement parts. If you have a Tesla, you get Tesla parts. So you want to make sure that you have that insured correctly, because you put a lot of money into it.
Right.
So,
okay.
So we have policies that have all those extra coverages, and you want to make sure you have those. My experience with having an electric car get in an accident, it's down for a long time. It's down for a long time because of the parts, so you're not getting parts for regular, everyday cars. It's really hard to get parts for these new cars that they have out there now. So, I'm seeing that it's down. So longer, rental reimbursement, higher, policies, because it's nice to say, hey, my car's broken down. Chris is going to let me borrow his car for, a couple of weeks. It's not a couple of weeks anymore. Do you want to borrow your friend's car for months,
right? Right.
So it's different that way, but you want to make sure you have a company that understands electric cars when they make the claim.
Right. And how about, you mentioned cyber security or cyber insurance? What on earth I had a show that very specifically talked about cyber insurance and the risks and all that stuff. So I personally know that show and understand some of the answers, but what's your take on cyber insurance, and how does that onion even get started to peel?
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw the 517 magazine. I was on the front of it for the cyber insurance.
Yep.
And you really, and I hate to keep saying this, but you really need to sit with your agent and see what your exposure is and what you're concerned about. Businesses, it can put them right out of business. And I did listen to that show. So I know exactly, and she was right. When she said it could put you right out of business, it could put you right out of business. So you really need to make sure you have it more than the rider, have an actual cybersecurity policy. Right.
And I've had tech companies on to talk about cybersecurity and things they can do to prevent, the hacking and then all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think the misconception is that it's Home Depot is going to, or the gas station with the swipe credit card. That doesn't apply to me. And one of the things I learned really is it can be hijacking your emails and it can be, it doesn't really matter how big your business is or what kind of business that you're in.
Right.
And it's also probably not a matter of if, but a matter of when.
Exactly. And personally,
Right.
personally, and then just even small things, like we take tons of pictures now, right? I mean, tons of pictures. You know, my son's 32 years old. I don't have many pictures of him as a baby. Now, people have every day a picture of their baby, right? Now, if someone hacks into your computer and they, put a ransomware on there and you can't get to your pictures, how important is that to you? Like, that's a small thing. It sounds very small, but you have your life on your computers now. You have, unless you have it backed up really well. So that's some things that we do talk about in the reviews is go through and back up your computers. Make sure you're backing up your phone so things are in the cloud,
Right.
Make sure you're doing it. A lot of people aren't, so that if something does happen, you can just say, okay, I don't need to take care of this, But we tell people about passwords. Very easy to crack a 6-digit password. Very easy. They can do it within seconds now because they have the technology to do it. Have a 13-digit password, so that would take them years and years to crack it. So everything like that, we do those in the review. So when you sit with me, I'm not just talking to you about insurance. I'm talking to you about how to protect your life too. And like you said, to make sure that these things don't happen to you, before something happens, And
I had, the password thing actually does every month or two. It hits me. I'm like, I've got to do that.
Right.
I mean, I have so many username and passwords out there. My wife's got a great spreadsheet, but all the passwords are all pretty normal things, right? And there are all these different technologies where you can have this massive, big, low, capital, small, there's this really gobbledygook of a password, but you can store it somewhere where you can keep that.
Right.
But they mentioned that just because you have no problems right now and you have these, 6-digit passwords, he's like, there's a very real possibility and almost a probability that you're hacked, but they're just sitting on it.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, they're in and they're just deciding whether you're worth striking or when you're worth striking. So, changing your passwords with routine and with a new password that's hard kind of kicks them back out again. So.
Exactly. And that's why, when you have a company that asks you to reset it every 30 days, that's why, because they know that a hacker's sitting there and watching and waiting and hacking somebody else in the meantime, but let them kick them out, So yeah, it's very important, and it's important for especially businesses, but it's important for personal use also. So you're not making a claim on that insurance, you're not,
right.
You don't want to make the claim either, so try to keep it as safe as possible.
So I think about all of this stuff, and when you have professional accreditations, there's always that continuing ed. And I always never really had those accreditations. I have a couple now, or I'm working towards one, and I already have another. So now I'm living in the continuing ed world, and most people that are in that world tend to groan and eye roll about it. But I'll tell you what, how else do you sharpen your saw, right? I mean,
exactly.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is how do you at 35 years in, how do you not just say, I've got this? Because there's always new stuff popping up. Are there conferences or is it through continuing ed? Are there other places? Like, how do you guys all stay because you're obligated to be ahead of your clients, right? So you don't want your clients to say, hey, I heard about this thing on the news. What are you doing to prepare for that? Or how does my policy cover me for that? And have you say, I don't know what you're talking about. It's probably not a good answer.
Exactly. And I've been in the CE world forever, so, and there's always different schools of thought, like the groaning, let me figure out how to get it done the quickest and the fastest and the easiest, or let's learn something, So I've always been under the school, let's learn something, because if I go to a meeting now, like you said, what am I going to learn now? What am I going to learn after 35 years? I always learned one more thing. Every time I go to a meeting, every time I take a class, I learn one more thing or something that maybe I haven't talked about in a long time. So we do, when our employees do continuing ed, they are constantly learning every day from a customer asking a question.
Yep.
But we have through each company. Each company has classes that we take, and they have to take a class at least once a month. So they're staying on top of things so that they know what they're talking about, so that they're as knowledgeable as I am. So, we make sure that once a month is not a once a year thing or once every 2 year thing. We make sure that they stay on top of, what's happening. The companies do a really good job. You probably see in your homeowner's policy that they raised your dwelling amount. And they did that to stay on top of inflation. So people got rate increases, but they got more dwelling coverage. So the companies are good at staying on top of it and teach us and help us stay on top of trends also.
How about your staff, right? I mean, so you're the owner of your agency, right? Correct. So your name's on the line, your name's on the sign. But you've got other people, obviously, they're helping, they're starting their careers. You probably aren't going to do this forever. So, I mean, just getting more people. How do you vet these people? How do they make sure that they've got the same kind of moral compass that you've got?
So one good thing is I have my son working in the agency.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
he manages, we have an agency over in Lansing and one in Okemos.
Okay.
And so he manages the agencies. And so I know his moral compass, and I know that he's going to care about it just as much as me. And it's funny, when he came in, he learned so quickly because he's been hearing me talk at the dinner table for years, with
Right.
the verbiage and just how much passion I have for the insurance industry and how much I care about people, and I care about them at the time of the claim, and I care about what happens. So he has that. So he's in the office every day teaching that to everybody else. And when we interview somebody, we have no idea. We have no idea when we interview them, so we can tell them about the first 30 days though. First 30 days, if they care about people just as much as us, if they, are going to do the right thing, we can really tell that about the first 30 days, based on how they're reacting to a customer calling in, to a claim that happens. And so we have a really good team right now, and they're all just the kindest, caring people. If you call them, they care if you've had a claim. They care if your car's in a wreck. We're here in Michigan, right? We
Right.
love our cars.
Yes, we do.
And, and they know that, so it's important, to have people surrounding you. And I'm not going to have anybody surrounding me that's not a lot like me, because they're a projection of me. And it's very important that our whole agency looks that way to the consumer.
Now, you mentioned multiple locations.
Yes.
So 2?
I have 2.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
in Lansing and in Okemos.
In Lansing and Okemos,
And
correct.
same services, same everything.
Same services.
Just geographically more convenient
Exactly.
for whoever. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And it is Lansing. We look at it, if we're going to Lansing or Okemos, it's 2 different worlds, right?
Right.
So we have it for the convenience. People still walk in the door. People still, come in and see the value of sitting down with their agents. So we want to make that convenient for them.
So outside of saying yes to that annual review of your policy, are there things that our listeners, like kind of low-hanging fruit, things that they should, that it's like 80% of people are underinsured in this area, or people aren't thinking about this thing that they need to, regardless of who their agent is, they should go in and ask directly about this. What kinds of things would land in your queue for that?
So I think first of all is I'd go back to what you said. Treat your insurance agent as part of your portfolio, because if you're just taking anybody that calls you on the phone, I don't know where they're calling you from. Are they sitting in Tennessee and trying to sell you insurance and get you the best rate? Find somebody that you trust. Find somebody that you care is going to be there with you, holding your hand while you go through something bad. I think first of all, you start there. Pick a professional that you really know that and trust. What we're seeing a lot is if I lose a customer and we ask them to send us deck pages, a lot of times they strip the coverages. They change coverages to lower your rate. So really find somebody that you know is doing the right thing for you and your family, because you don't want to find out at the time of the claim that you didn't get what you thought you had.
Right.
So I would start there. And then the other thing is ask questions. What are you concerned about? And that is one thing that I ask people is like, is this important to you? If you had an accident with this car today, do you want us to fix it? Or do you not want us to fix it? If you got hurt today and you were hurt and you're paralyzed, do you want to be taken care of by your insurance company? We ask those questions. We would like you to ask us the same questions. Like, what does this cover? This is important. We have a lot of people that just want their certificate of insurance and get it out the door. Well, what are you concerned about? Businesses do that a lot. I need a certificate for this company. Well, what do you do for that company? Are you covered even for
Right.
what you're doing for that company? Be very thorough in what you're asking for, because you might not be covered for what you're doing for that company. You have a business policy, but you might not have what you need for that. So ask the question, say, this is what I'm doing, and be open and honest. Like, a lot of people try to hide young drivers. They try to, hide speeding tickets or try to hide what they're actually doing in their business or little things they do on the side. Don't do that, because we're going to find out the time of the claim, and you may be paying for coverage that you're never going to get. So asking the questions when you walk in the door is so important, and just having that dialogue to say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I need, this is what I'm concerned about. Just even with like a buy-sell, if you have a business and you were to pass away, can your wife run that business? Can your husband run that business? Can your kids run that business? Do they even want to?
Right.
Do you have somebody that you can give that money to buy that business from you? There's just so many things, especially if you're going to run a business. There's so many things that you need to talk to your agent about. So it's not just the review. It's walking in the door and getting what you need right out of the chute.
Right on. Well, this is all great information. And again, it's really just reinforcing the message that I said earlier. Bring your insurance agent in to your life. Have it be someone who's credible and trustworthy and consultative, and make sure that you've got what you need. So it's been fantastic hearing you talk. And how can people learn more about Great Lakes State Insurance Agency?
Well, they can call our office at 517-394-4800. Super easy phone number.
Yeah.
You can email us at glsa@greatlsa. So it's Great Lakes State Agency.
Yep.
You can email us, or you can find our website at greatlakesstateagency.com. So
fantastic.
Very easy to find us.
And in today's Google world, it's easy to find people.
Yep.
But we've been talking to Pam Lambropoulos, who is the owner of the Great Lakes State Insurance Agency. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.